Good day to the viewing and listening public. My name is Stacey Carmichael, and today on this special program, I have with me the Senior Minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh. Minister Singh, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Stacey. It is, in fact, always my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Great, Minister. And so today we'll be examining some key issues as it relates to the economy and certain growth projections, and also certain comments made by the opposition. Minister, just to get going, what are your thoughts on the statements made recently overseas by the opposition leader? He claims that Guyanese who do not support the PPPC government are faced with discrimination.
So, once again, of course, thank you very much, Stacey, for inviting me to be on this program with you. You raise the question of the comments made by the opposition leader in relation to discrimination. Let me say, first of all, that the most recent set of pronouncements made by the opposition leader should to anybody. The APNU and its principal constituent member, the PNC, have a long history, in fact, that would unavoidably lead us to certain conclusions in relation to the comments that he has made. First of all, the APNU, AFC, current opposition, is a party that has demonstrated their intellectual bankruptcy, their incompetence and inability to formulate policies in the interest of the country, in the interest of Guyana and the Guyanese people, and their complete lack of capacity either to present any coherent policy or indeed any sensible response to this government's comprehensive policy agenda. What you hear, in fact, if we were to go back to the period during 2015 to 2020 when they had an opportunity to serve in government, what you witnessed during that 5-year period, when, like I said, they had an opportunity to be in government and to serve the people of Guyana and to improve the lives of the Guyanese people, you had 5 years of abject failure on the part of the APNU AFC to improve the lives of the people of Guyana, to improve the economic circumstances of our country. And I can give multiple examples in this regard. First of all, during the 5-year period, they articulated no vision or policy in relation to promoting growth in the economy, and in particular to promoting diversification of the economy. Instead, it appeared that the strategy was simply to sit and wait for oil to come. We saw agriculture completely decimated. We saw the services sector completely decimated. And this is even before the no confidence motion. We saw, and then subsequently with the passage of the no confidence motion, we saw a political behavior and a policy posture that led to essentially to the economy grinding to a halt, as a result of which during their last year in office, the non-oil economy suffered a very sharp contraction, because of course you were dealing with the country was coping with this very adverse and hostile policy environment under the APNU, AFC, and then on top of that, of course, you had COVID-19 compounding this even further. Now, since they became the opposition and the People's Progressive Party formed the government. If you look at our successive budgets, you would see a consistent pattern by the People's Progressive Party, a consistent policy position that promotes improving the lives of all Guyanese, creating an environment for job creation, for income generation, and for improved well-being. In response to which the APNU AFC really has no answer. And so the recourse to this, the ethnic bogeyman, the baseless statements being made about discrimination, etc., are reflective of the fact that the APNU AFC has no sensible response to the comprehensive agenda that is being implemented by President Ali's People's Progressive Party civic government. And if you look across the entire spectrum, if you look at almost everything that we're doing in government, you will see a systematic approach designed to ensure that all Guyanese benefit. Let's take, for example, our social support programs, things like the cash grant for COVID relief. When we came into government, we recognized that a number of households were in terrible financial distress as a result of the contraction and grinding to a halt by the economy under the APNU AFC. We implemented immediately one of the first measures that we implemented. We came into government, President Ali assumed office on the 2nd of August 2020, under the leadership of the Vice President and the President. An emergency budget was tabled in Parliament within about a month. One of the showpieces of that emergency budget was, of course, an emergency COVID grant for every single household. Note, every single household. And that program was rolled out across all 10 regions of the country. In every region, in every village, a town, every municipality, every town, every village, every street, every household. Where's the discrimination here? And I can give multiple other examples. The COVID cash grant is one. But if you look at so many other things that we had instituted and that were reversed to the detriment of the Guyanese people, harming all Guyanese people during the APNU AFC years, and that we have now had to restore. If you look at the 200 plus taxes that they imposed on Guyanese people, frankly, all Guyanese people across every region and of every ethnicity, if you look at, for example, introducing VAT on electricity, VAT on water, VAT on education, VAT on health, medical supplies, VAT on school supplies, VAT on construction materials, VAT on heavy equipment, taking away the cash grant to parents. These interventions by the APNU AFC harmed every single Guyanese family. When we came into office, we restored all of those programs. We restored the cash grant to school children and we increased it. We restored it immediately, we increased it. Today, every single family receives, for their school-age children, a cash grant totaling $30,000 per school-going family. That puts in the hands the disposable incomes of families across Guyana, again in all 10 regions. That alone puts in the hands of parents whose children are going to school $6 billion. And note, it goes to every single family, irrespective of where you live, irrespective of where your ancestors came from, irrespective of which religion you subscribe to. When the cash grant to parents of children going to school is distributed, it's distributed to all the parents of all Guyanese children. The APNU AFC took that away from every single Guyanese child and every single Guyanese home. They took that away. When we removed rather, the VAT on electricity and the VAT on water, that's paid by everybody. That was being paid under the APNU by every Guyanese household. When we removed it, every single Guyanese household now benefits. Every household that pays an electricity bill or a water bill no longer has to pay VAT on their electricity bill and water bill. That is a benefit enjoyed by all Guyanese people. If you take, for example, the 1 month cash bonus, that you tax-free cash bonus that we used to pay to the members of the discipline services, and I've said this on multiple occasions in the parliament, they came into office and took away. I heard some statement was made, he made some statement about how much increase they gave to public servants. I can speak about what they took away from the public servants. First of all, they put VAT on the public servants' water and electricity bill, first of all. Secondly, they took away the cash grant. Public servants are also parents. So a public service family that had maybe 3 children going to school, they took away the cash grant. 2 children going, they took away the cash grant that family was getting for their children going to school. They took that away from public servants. And indeed from all Guyanese. The discipline services used to benefit from a 1 month tax-free bonus. They took that away. We have restored it. That alone puts about $1 billion into the pockets of our men and women in uniform. Their families at the end of the year get an additional month of salary paid to them, tax-free, as a bonus. That benefits all the members of the discipline services. We don't ask where you're serving. We don't ask how long you've served for. We don't ask where you were born. We don't ask what is your ethnicity, where your ancestors came from. We don't ask what religion you subscribe to. We don't ask any other question about your orientation in any regard. All members of the discipline services get their 1 month tax-free bonus from this People's Progressive Party civic government. That was taken away by the APNU AFC. And there are several such examples. If you take the housing program, for the 5 years that they were in office, they virtually ground the housing program to a halt. Nobody was getting any house lots. Nothing was being processed. I think they were experimenting with some duplex homes or something. I don't know how many of those were built, if a few dozen or something were built. But thousands of Guyanese people were waiting to get their house lots under the APNU AFC. Couldn't get a house lot. I don't know what they were experimenting with, but the housing program ground to a halt. Our president said, we said as a party in our manifesto, we will resume the distribution of house lots. We will distribute 50,000 house lots in 5 years. We came into office, we immediately revamped and strengthened the housing ministry, and we started an aggressive program to start back distributing house lots. I believe since we've been in office, we've probably distributed about 10,000 house lots. That benefit has gone to, here again, when you apply for a house lot, you have people of every background, I would say almost every region. Of course, the house lot program is heavily coastal based, but even in the hinterland, we have a housing program. The president just launched a very significant housing initiative in Region 9, for example. But throughout the length and breadth of the coast, and even in some of the hinterland regions, this housing program benefits Guyanese of every background. Guyanese of every background now once again have the capacity to become the owner of a plot of land in their own country. And then on top of that, we have further strengthened the measures in the banking system intended to bring relief to those people so that they can more affordably access financing to build their homes. So amongst the things that we've done, We increased the ceiling. When we left office, the ceiling on mortgage interest relief was $30 million. They slashed it to $15 million. We restored it to the $30 million that it was prior to when we left office. So we doubled the ceiling on the mortgage interest relief. We have increased the ceiling on the low-income housing window, which makes lending more affordable through the banking system. We've increased the ceiling on loans granted by the New Building Society. That also makes it easier for people to access affordable financing for home ownership. Lending for home ownership is at the cost of lending for home ownership is at an all-time low, and that is a benefit enjoyed by all Guyanese. You have an allocation letter, or you own a plot of land, you go into the bank, irrespective of where you're from, irrespective of where your ancestors came from. You're able to go into the bank, you get a loan, you can go and build your own home, become a homeowner, achieve the remarkably empowering circumstance of owning your own home that you can pass on to your children. You don't have to pay rent, you're no longer a tenant, you don't face the threat of eviction, you own your own home. Instead of paying rent every month, you're paying your mortgage at the bank. You own an asset. When you finish paying off your loan, if you extend that logically to what that does for economic empowerment, once you pay off your mortgage, you own that plot of land. You own a valuable asset. You can then use that asset as collateral if you want to take a small loan to set up a small business or to buy a motor car or whatever the case may be. You have a valuable asset that you can use as collateral. There could be nothing more economically empowering than making a young Guyanese family a homeowner, to own a plot of land. That's a significant achievement. And here again, all Guyanese families benefit from this. And so there are multiple examples that could be given. I spoke at an event in Linden about 3 weeks ago, a new investment that's being launched for an oxygen plant and a cement plant in Linden. And I gave the example, I said, as soon as we came back into office, on my first visit to Linden, I went to the location of the call center that used to operate there. I was shocked and horrified. The building had been abandoned. There was no activity. When we left office, there was a thriving call center operating in Linden, employing dozens of Lindeners, almost more than 100 Lindeners. The investor was essentially not given any support. The operation was closed down and abandoned. That's 100 and something Linden families who had previously been earning an income that could no longer earn an income. We said, I conveyed this to President Ali and the cabinet. The president said, as he would always do, he said, let us fix it immediately. We went in, we repaired the building, completed the repair of the building. We got a Guyanese entrepreneur who owns call centers elsewhere, entered into partnership with him to restart the operation and start back hiring Lindeners to work in Linden. So that alone, that's creating potentially another 150 jobs or so for Lindeners. The investment that I launched, what that I just referred to, the gas, the oxygen plant and the cement plant, that itself will create another 40 to 50 jobs in Linden. Again, Lindeners. And so, I made the point, can the AP and UAFC point to a single example of a significant investment that they facilitated in Linden? Let's not search the whole country. We could search the whole country and not find. But let's just search, they had 5 years. Point to a single project in Linden that created jobs. Point to a single project in Berbice that created jobs, or in Essequibo, or anywhere else. And so, there's so many other examples that could be given. I mean, people often speak about the devastating impact of the closure of the sugar industry. People often speak about the devastating impact of the closure of the sugar industry under the AP and UAFC, when they put 7,000 sugar workers out of work and had a devastating impact on the communities in which these people live. But people don't speak as frequently as they should about the fact that it was under the APNU AFC's stewardship that the Berbice River bauxite operations were allowed to close. That the investors there, we had worked hard, the People's Progressive Party government had worked very hard under our previous administration, going back to President Jack Davis' time. We had worked hard to get an international investor to come in and resuscitate bauxite in the Berbice River in Kwakwani. During the course of the APNUFC period, no support was provided to the industry. They allowed the industry to be harassed, obstructed, and ultimately the investors were chased out, essentially. Bringing the bauxite mining operations in Berbice River to a close and putting hundreds of bauxite workers out of work happened under the APNU AFC, after it took such a great effort to get investors to come and resuscitate the bauxite operations there. They will claim they love bauxite workers. They did nothing. They did nothing whatsoever to ensure that an investor was kept in Kwakwani producing bauxite. Not absolutely nothing. And so, you know, I could give many, many, many more examples, but what I would say to you is that what you're seeing, this resort to, you know, these statements being made, this resort by the APNUAFC and in particular by the opposition leader to this, the arguments of discrimination, reflects the fact, what it says more than anything else, is that the policies that we're implementing, he has no answer for. As not only are they unable to articulate a credible criticism of those policies, but they're unable to articulate an alternative policy position too. They're unable to articulate an alternative policy position of any sort on any issue. If you think about it and you listen to their constant commentary, you don't hear anything about an alternative option, an alternative policy for absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so the accusations of discrimination are reflective of an intellectually bankrupt APNU-AFC that has nothing to offer the people of Guyana except than to incite discontent and hostility. But I will say this, that Guyanese people are wiser. Guyanese people are wiser, and they're wiser than ever before. You know, people, all of us live and learn by the accumulation of our experience over time. You don't think Guyanese people of every ethnic background, you don't think they're asking themselves, what did the APNU-AFC do from 2015 to 2020? Every single Guyanese person of every ethnic background is asking that question. You know, and you know, even if you talk about things like scholarships and access to education, the Gold Scholarship Program. Here again, over 6,000 persons getting a scholarship to study online, acquiring additional skills. Those lists have been published publicly. You can scrutinize them, and of course, names are not always an indicator of. You can't really predict, you know, necessarily ancestral background or ethnic background based on names. But if you look at the names, you'll see it. And again, it's a small society. Many of those people, if you come from that particular region, you probably know half of the people anyhow. If you scrutinize the lists, I believe we've been publishing the lists of people who've benefited from Gold Scholarship. Scrutinize the list, and you'll see diversity at work. Guyanese of every background, from every region, benefiting from the Gold Scholarship Program. The APNUFC can't do that. They can't point up to, you don't know who was benefiting from anything during their period. Right? So Guyanese people are a lot wiser, you know, as you would expect. People over the course of time, people saw they had the People's Progressive Party in government until 2015. The APNU-AFC was given an opportunity from 2015 to 2020. The people, having had the benefit of that experience to observe the APNU-AFC as an alternative government, spoke resoundingly with their votes in 2020, having looked at the two alternatives before them, having asked them the question, having asked themselves the question, when the People's Progressive Party was in government, what, how was my life changing when the People's Progressive Party was in government, and when under the APNU AFC, how was my life changing and my circumstances? And they put those two things side by side and spoke in 2020 resoundingly about who they thought was the better alternative for governing Guyana. And so what you're witnessing here is reflective of the intellectual bankruptcy and also reflective of the abject ineptitude and incompetence of the APNU. They have nothing sensible to say. They have nothing sensible to say, and they have nothing credible or sensible to offer the people of Guyana. So you're witnessing a recourse to in the use of the ethnic card or the ethnic bogeyman to incite hostility and to create tensions and incite hostility amongst our Guyanese brothers and sisters.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now, Minister, you've said a lot about those claims of discrimination. Let me just shift a little bit from that. The Guyana Chronicle carried a headline highlighting that $64 billion was placed in the pockets of Guyanese through various social measures aimed at alleviating the rising cost of living, which of course is being experienced around the world. What were the key measures that accounted for this sizable cash transfer?
Sure. So I mentioned some of them already.
Yes,
I mentioned the removal of the taxes. Those fiscal measures alone would have increased the disposable incomes of the Guyanese families by about $50 billion. The tax measures implemented in the first 2 or 3 budgets where we have had 3 budgets so far. The COVID cash grant, the increases in old age pension, increases in public assistance, the restoration of the school grant, the grant for school age children, the restoration of the discipline services bonus, just to mention a few. I mean, those are a few, and if you add them together, you'll see, in fact, that 64 billion is probably a conservative figure. Not to mention, of course, our very strong emphasis on, investing in the country, building out infrastructure, upgrading our roads, upgrading our schools, upgrading our hospitals, and so on, all of which also create jobs and generate incomes for people. Every additional road that you build, every additional school that you build, creates jobs as well and improves people's circumstances. So all of those measures, like I said, the ones that I mentioned earlier, would all have contributed, in fact, and why I suspect that you might find that $64 billion is actually a conservative figure, considering the tax measures and the social protection measures that we provided.
Great. And just a little spin-off from that same question and your response. What would you say are the common threads in the social measures you just highlighted that points to the issue of fairness, with all Guyanese, of course, benefiting equitably?
Well, these measures have one strong distinguishing characteristic, and that is their universal application. When we remove the taxes on construction materials, it doesn't matter who you are. When you go into the store to buy construction materials, you are benefiting from the removal of the taxes from construction materials. When we remove the taxes on educational supplies or medical supplies, it's universally applicable. Anybody who walks into the store and buys these items would benefit. When we remove the VAT on electricity and water, once you're an electricity or water consumer and a bill comes to your home, your bill no longer has the VAT. Universal applicability. If you're giving out a cash grant to parents of children at school, universally everybody will benefit from it. So by ensuring universal applicability, you have an inherent safeguard to ensure fairness. And that's very important. Some may argue that maybe we should try to target more vulnerable communities, and those things introduce a lot of judgment, and oftentimes become far more complicated and difficult to implement with. And we have said we're going to keep the eligibility criteria very simple, to ensure that fairness is served. And so that is why the overwhelming majority of our social transfer programs are in fact universal programs.
Okay, great. Now, just stepping back a little bit, Minister, to the opposition's rhetoric of racism and discrimination, which seem to have been fashioned into a sustained campaign which is part of a broader political strategy. As a closing point, what are your thoughts on the objective of this sustained narrative?
Well, one, I would say that they are deploying this narrative for want of an alternative on their side, because they don't have anything else to contribute to the Guyanese people. Mm-hmm. Like I said, having sat in office for 5 years, 2.5 of which were illegal, having failed abjectly to do anything to benefit the Guyanese people in any meaningful way, having instead implemented a raft of policies that in fact hurt the Guyanese people in a very significant and direct way, and I gave examples of those earlier. Mm-hmm. They have nothing to the APNUFC has nothing to offer the Guyanese people. And so, in the absence of any credible alternative, in the absence of being able to articulate a credible alternative, they are resorting to the only card in their pack, the only instrument in their toolkit, trying to invoke some kind of tension. But let me say this, that this government, and in particular this government led by this president, have set about on a course designed to ensure that all Guyanese people are part of the transformation that is taking place in our country today. It's not an accident that our president has adopted the One Guyana concept or the One Guyana philosophy as the bedrock of his presidency. That is not, it's by accident, it's not a casual statement. It is a deeply rooted and deep-seated philosophical approach to governance, ensuring that all Guyanese, irrespective, like I said, irrespective of where you live, irrespective of where your ancestors came from, irrespective of what religious teachings you subscribe to, irrespective of all of those criteria and more, that you are a part of this transformation that is taking place in Guyana, that you contribute to it, you participate in it, and you benefit from it. And so the One Guyana concept of the People's Progressive Party, which incidentally they have no answer to this. And you're seeing it being rolled out every day, like I said, whether it is in the housing program or the scholarships program or the cash transfers to parents. You're seeing it being rolled out every day, ensuring that the training programs to ensure that people get the skills that are needed to participate in the new economy. You're seeing it every day. Mm-hmm. You're seeing it every day. And so I have no doubt that their intention, given that they have no other argument that they can offer, they have no other, contribution to make. I shouldn't even say no, because this is not a contribution. They have no other basis on which to present themselves to the Guyanese people. They are seeking recourse, they are resorting to the only thing they have, and that is to try to incite some discontent. But like I said, I have tremendous confidence in the maturity and sound judgment of the Guyanese people. And people have demonstrated, all of the Guyanese people have demonstrated over the years that they are quite capable of analyzing situations, circumstances and events, and forming an opinion, and sensible opinion for themselves. And so this narrative will not gain any traction. This narrative by the APNUFC will not gain any traction whatsoever.
Well, thank you so much, Minister. I want to also thank you for being on the program and for bringing clarity to certain issues and for highlighting a number of measures that have been implemented by the government to ensure the equitable development of Guyanese. So thank you once again for joining us, and thank you so much to the listening and viewing public. My name is Stacey Carmichael. Today I was joined by Senior Minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh. Goodbye for now.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank
You're
you very
welcome,
much.
Minister.
Thank you.